Hello everyone, again, Yosef here, and for this video, I'm just going to give my thoughts on something. Before I start, I should mention how lucky I am, because a little more than a week ago, I attended the ZOA Gala dinner, and it was incredible to see so many well-known and powerful people, and also eat a bunch of delicious food. I got to take a picture with David Freeman, the US Ambassador to Israel, and also Congressman Ron DeSantis. More on him in a moment. It was an incredible experience, hands down, and I'm so grateful to Dr. Craig DeLegdish and Alan Hamawi for covering my tickets to the gala as well as my hotel for the night in New York. Without them, none of this would have been possible. Now, about this picture, I was actually very excited to see Congressman DeSantis because I saw him before in this video, which is what I'm talking about today. Now, if you have no idea what's going on, let me explain. Year after year, the US has been trying to move its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Unfortunately, every year in June, our presidents have constantly been signing a form which delays the process of moving the embassy. And it's been happening since President Clinton. All these presidents have promised us that they would move the US embassy to Jerusalem, which brings us to this congressional hearing. If all goes well, we'll pass the right to no presidential signing towards the final word, which basically means the president doesn't have a final say towards whether the embassy should be moved or not. And to clarify, this is not about whether the embassy should be moved or not. Congress already passed to move the embassy. It's just that the presidents have been constantly delaying this process. Now, I know you'd probably want to hear me commentate over all 2 hours of this hearing, but to keep this video concise, I'm going to focus on our ZOA President Morton Klein, because he does mention some great points.
The U.S. should move the embassy to Jerusalem, not only because it's a just and moral thing to do, but because it's a law passed with bipartisan, almost unanimous support 22 years ago. Delaying implementation sends the message that Islamist threats and terrorism work. But moving the embassy will strengthen American security and enhance worldwide respect for America by demonstrating the U.S. can be counted on to keep her commitments to her allies and will not, dare not be intimidated by appeasing radical Islamic threats. If we allow U.S. policy to be determined by terror threats, we have only encouraged more such threats, more such terror, and undermined the U.S. campaign to eradicate radical Islamic terror.
You see, that's pretty important. I know when I was going to Israel, a couple of my friends were still scared to go because there were still terror attacks at the time. And what I said to them was that to not go out of fear of terrorism, you're letting the terrorists win that way. So this would be a step up in terms of showing radicalists that we are not afraid. Let's keep watching, shall we?
The Jerusalem Embassy Act's waiver provision has been inappropriately used for 22 years. The Act's drafters made it clear that the waiver was not intended to be invoked repeatedly or for policy disagreements, but only for a serious security emergency.
Okay, whoa. That's pretty important. To think the presidents are using this waiver provision in a wrong manner because what's supposed to be used only once or twice in a state of emergency has actually been used countless times over the course of 22 years. That is some wrongdoing on our president's side. All three of them, in fact. Now, I get people could say that this is for peace and whatnot, that we're not moving it into Jerusalem so we don't start up more Arab riots. But that's clearly not true because we're still having conflict now. If you don't take my word for it, take his.
We haven't moved the embassy for 22 years, yet we're further from peace today than we were 22 years ago. Not moving the embassy did not help. Peace is impossible solely because of the Palestinian Arabs' refusal to accept Israel within any border, the refusals to even negotiate and outlaw terrorist groups, and refusal to end the promotion of hatred and murder and violence in their speeches, schools, and media.
Now, what I love about Mr. Klein the most is how I understand being in ZOA doesn't necessarily mean you believe in the Bible and all the Jewish texts and whatnot, but when he speaks, he uses these texts as valid evidence, which I personally love because I grew up learning these texts.
In the Holy Quran, Jerusalem is never mentioned. In the Jerusalem holy books, it's mentioned 700 times. When Jerusalem was under Arab control, not a single Arab leader other than King Hussein and his father visited. If it's so holy, why didn't others visit it? It belies their claim of holy status. The fundamental premise of why there's a debate is that the Arabs claim that Jerusalem is holy to Muslims. That's the premise. This is a fundamental falsehood. The majority of people living in Jerusalem since the mid-1800s have been Jews. Second largest number of people, Christians. Muslims are the third since the mid-1800s. And the Arabs say, well, our Quran says that Muhammad went from Jerusalem to heaven. But what does it really say? It says Muhammad had a dream, not an occurrence, a dream, that on his winged horse he flew from the sacred mosque to the furthest mosque. The evidence makes it clear that this claim that the furthest mosque in Jerusalem can't be. When Palestine is mentioned in the Quran, it's referred to as the closest land, not the furthest land. So Jerusalem, which is in Palestine, cannot be the furthest mosque when Palestine is the closest land. And listen to this, one more thing. Palestine then had not yet been conquered by the Muslims. There wasn't a single mosque in Palestine when the Quran was written.
Great. I know that was a long clip, but like I said, this is what I love the most when they go back to our ancient roots. I'm gonna end it off with this guy, Jim Jordan, who really sums up this whole meeting, honestly.
Just a few years ago, well, I guess more than a few years ago, 1995, we passed an act, Jerusalem Embassy Act, that almost every single member of Congress voted for. Is that right?
That's correct.
Passed I think it was like a voice vote in the House, but in the Senate it was like 93 to 5, right?
Something like that.
And for this act to take effect and for the embassy to go to Jerusalem, this is amazing. Congress doesn't have to do anything, something we're actually pretty darn good at, right? We don't have to do a darn, and frankly, the president doesn't have to do anything. Is that right?
That's correct, and it was a sign Congress was willing to pay for it too, which is also interesting.
So this is what I get. We don't have to do anything. The president doesn't have to do anything. Everyone has spoken. The president campaigned on this. The American people elected him as this was a central issue of his campaign. We do it everywhere else except one country, which, just happens to be one of our best friends in the entire world. Is that right?
That's correct.
So this is what gets me. It's like, this is real simple to me. This is about remembering your friends. This is about loyalty. This is about recognizing the fact that there is one country in the world who stands with us every single time. They happen to be the one country where we get our Judeo-Christian value system from, the state of Israel, and yet they're the one nation where we won't put the embassy where it's supposed to be. And particularly now when you think about what we went through the last 8 years with the previous administration, and more importantly, what happened the last few months of that administration at the United Nations, this is the right time to do this thing. And that's why the president recognized it, campaigned on it, and one of the reasons I would say the American people elected him. Would you agree, Ambassador Bolton?
I think that's entirely true, yes.
So let's just get it done. Let's just get it done, right? I want to thank the President of the United States, who had the courage to say this was the right thing to do. The time is now, particularly in light of what we went through the last 8 years. Let's get this done. Let's get it done as quickly as possible. I understand there's some practical concerns. You've all outlined them. Ambassador Gold outlined. That's fine, but let's get this done. It is the right thing to do, and it's most important. When it comes to, you got to remember who your friends are, who share your common set of values, the values that I think make the world a better place. Let's recognize all that and get this thing done.
Okay, I'll admit, I put the applause in the second time. But that's really all I have to say in terms of how I feel. I hope this video was meaningful to all of you. Hopefully better than my first one. And until next time.